The Mary we discover in Luke 1 is a real teenager in the midst of deeply challenging and stressful circumstances. You know, misquoting Billy Joel, you know, da-na-na-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Small town girl, you know, living in a small town world. I told you, I felt like singing. Of course, she is a teenager. And as any girl in the first century, Mary was in charge of the cleaning of the house, the planting, the sewing, the cooking, and many other things. And the thing is, she has a lot in common with teenagers of the 21st century because she struggled to survive. And I think that modern teenagers, you know, don't have it easy these days. No, they experience a lot of stress like never before. Because since they were little kids, they are tested, evaluated, and graded, and rewarded or punished. They live under constant pressure and stress. They are even more stressed than adults. And in some cases, it is the adults that are giving them all this stress. Don't you agree with me? That's right. So life was tough for Mary, and it was made tougher when the angel Gabriel comes to interrupt what we might imagine to be the ordinary routine of the life of this young woman about to be married to a carpenter named Joseph, carpenter of Nazareth. And the angel, you know, like, he doesn't make any, you know, kind of preamble or sort of official thing to not to surprise her or shock her, but the angel tells Mary what is going to happen, that she's going to have a son, and he will be the promised king, the Savior, the Messiah. Don't worry. I mean, don't worry, really. No wonder Mary is confused, because it is not an easy thing to be confronted with the message of God. The summons to Mary, for that is what it was, summons, was no more different than the summons to Moses, to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jeremiah. You know, all of them found themselves surprised by the call of God. And they all of them found themselves annoyed, not so much at their own unworthiness for such a high calling, for that will come later, but annoyed at the more practical level of inconvenience. You know, Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Jeremiah, and Mary all had other things to do, you know, more urgent things, the fulfillment of their own destinies, the carrying forth of their own lives, their choices, their options, and challenges. And Mary was greatly troubled at the saying and considered in her mind what sort of greeting this might be. You know, what? It's like with any teenager, Gabriel, are you serious? You know, what's going to happen to me? I mean, me, little me, insignificant me, you know, unimportant me. God cannot use me. God would not want to use me. God cannot use me. And, you know, I'm just a poor girl from a poor family. Oh, no, that's, sorry. Mary done to deserve this distinction? The salutation tells the tale. Hail, favor one, depending on the translation. Hail, favor one. For the angel, means to say to her that she is chosen. Hail, chosen. Not because of her special grace and quality, but rather that she is full of grace and filled with favor because she is chosen by the will of God. And the thing is that God does not choose us to fulfill His purpose because we are worthy of such a choice or because we are good enough to do what He wishes. We have not won the prize competition, no, as it were. No, God chooses for reasons known only to Him. And it is the choice that confers the favor. When God chooses you, you are chosen. God's power, God's sovereignty allows God to choose what is lowly, what is ordinary for His purposes. Any God can make something good out of the exceptional and the extraordinary. Any God. But our God makes out of nothing something. Takes nowhere and makes it somewhere. Takes nobody and makes her somebody. That's when the angel Gabriel greeted Mary. He greeted her not simply as who she was, but rather as one whom she herself did not yet fully recognize herself. As the favored one, the chosen one. She who is full of grace. And the thing is, Mary knew herself to be insufficient for the ordinary demands of her modest life. So how could it be that heavenly things were in store for her? And it is Gabriel who simply says to her, "You have found favor with God." And favor in this sense means not simply, God noticed you, but enablement. God will enable you to fulfill what God desires. And that's grace. The capacity to will and do what God will have us do. That is grace. And such grace is never earned, never prepared for. It is always a gift. The unmerited and frequently unexpected gift of God. Hail Mary, gifted and enabled. And of course, what is her reaction? Her reaction is one of puzzlement. Because she knows her own limitations, and she knows what she can and cannot do. And she knows that even in Nazareth, the stork did not deliver babies, But Gabriel reminds her that her limitation must not be imposed upon God. No way. Because for God, all things are possible. So she concludes the interview with the angel with the words of our text. Let it be to me according to your will. let it be to me according to your will, or according to your word. So she puts her fear aside, and she is able to choose obedience. She says yes to God. And the thing is, this is amazing, because she is enabled by God. You know, remember, gifted and enabled. So she is enabled by God to walk away from the future she has outlined and into an unknown future God will offer her. And that is hard. That is always very, very hard to do. You know, that is called obedience. And because of it, she knows that there is a big price to pay as a teenager and as an adolescent. There will be a scandal. Wow, I cannot imagine if she were living in our day today. Facebook, you know, Twitter, the scandal would be huge. And thousands of friends, or hundreds of friends, probably would have unfriended Joseph immediately. She knows well that there is a price to pay for her obedience. She knows well how gossips vilify, slander, and defame. It is not difficult to imagine Mary, or, you know, how she felt. You know, many have been the parents who have been informed that their daughter is expecting a baby, you know, out of wedlock. How do you keep it quiet, you know? It happens to those who are going through divorce or separation. How can they avoid the embarrassment or the gossip? How can you face the fact that your shady business are about to be exposed, or that your arrest for being drunk will appear in the paper, or that you're sticking for your ticket for speeding will be, you know, the talk of town because it's going to show up in the newspaper? I used to work in Wilmington, south of Joliet, and every Friday in the Herald News there would be a list of all those who were not good with the law. It was juicy news. That day, the paper sold out. All the time. Mary knows that there is a big price to pay, because to violate the bonds of betrothal demands by law that the woman and the man involved be stoned to death. And Joseph, he is a just man, but in the society of his day, justice will insist that all the facts be made known and the guilty parties promptly punished. And unfortunately, that continues to be the case in many countries around the world, and we call them honor killings. See, obedience is hard. Obedience is not our favorite word. No. But the thing is, you and I learn obedience. We are not born with the desire to obey God or anyone in authority. It is a learning process. And some of us think that religion and faith is mostly about the adherence to a set of dogmas and beliefs and rules and regulations. In our Advent study, Down to Earth, in the chapter about Down to Earth obedience, the writer Rachel Billups comments that people struggle with faith because of the rules and regulations force-fed to them at church or by religious parents. And the thing is, we have made obedience more about avoiding trouble than about living fully into the faith that comes from a follower of Christ. And that definition of obedience lends itself to fear rather than faith. Obedience is not about avoiding punishment, but about saying, a big yes to God. So in the midst of her conversation with the angel Gabriel, Mary realized that God was asking her a life-altering question, or a life-bending question. Mary, will you be obedient? Mary says yes. And Mary says yes, affirms the promise that is within her to do what she was called to do. And here's the thing. All of us have grace. There's nobody here in this room, in this place, in this sanctuary, that does not have grace. All of us are graced. And God calls all of us to affirm the promise that is within us to do the work that God has called us to do. So my question to you is, will you become what you were meant to be to fulfill the divine plan of which you are so vital a part? Will you trust God's good purpose for your own journey? Maybe you were never voted most likely, most popular, prettiest, or best looking, or funniest. But look up. You may be just the person God is looking for. Yep. Because you are unique and wondrous creation of God. No one in the world, no one in all human history, no one who has ever lived possesses your unique gifts, your unique talents, your unique personality. No one is as good at being you as you are. And God made you for a purpose and has a plan for your life. Don't think for a minute here that you cannot be used by God, or that you are not good enough to be God's bearer, or that you have to get all the problems of your life sorted out before you can start living a life of God and for God. See, Advent brings us to ask these important questions, because living a Christian life, which means being a faithful follower of Jesus, which means answering God's call in our life, is not for the few, the proud, or the super saints among us. No. It's for the normal, the imperfect, the least likely people like you and me. It's for you and me. And so remember, you are God's bearer. Let your light shine these days in the midst of the celebration, that you could be the hope, the love, the joy, the peace that reigns at home these days. Because remember, you are God's light, God's bearer, and nothing is impossible for the one we serve.